All right, I'm back. I've got a new background. If you can tell me, get back to me and tell me the names of the two video games that these two backgrounds that I've shown you are from, I'll give you a $100 gift certificate to wherever you like. You can hold me to it. But that's not the purpose of this video. Let's get to my coding walkthrough to show you how amazing of an engineer I am not. All right, bear with me. Start coding challenges. I don't know if I'm gonna lose my the little video of myself. Let me see if I can. Oh, I'm still there. Okay, cool. Um, all right, so let's look at this. Hopefully it didn't go away. Okay, cool. All right, so my coding problem. So I'm not gonna how I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna read over each individual problem that I faced. You guys can kind of read that as I'm just walking through it because I want to, again, be respectful of your guys' time. But I will try to, let's see here, I just want to make sure. Um, I know that you had a little requirement for how I should walk through these. Teach or explain in your solutions, assuming that the person doing the video is a student seeing the material for the first time. Okay. All right, so I'm going to try and walk through these as if I'm a teacher of Python. Wow. And you are the student. So I'm not going to start at square one necessarily, but I will try to cover like the um, important syntax principles at play here. So for the majority of these problems, we're dealing, I think actually for all of them, I think we're dealing with functions, right? So we're going to be defining, the first thing we do whenever we're writing up a function is we have to define this function, right? Name of the function, and then we have the parameters, right? You put it in a colon, and then everything that pertains to the function is then indented, right? So for this problem, essentially what we needed to do is we needed to see if the number of x's equals the number of o's provided in a string parameter. Fairly simple problem to solve, I would say, even for if you put 20, 25 hours of work into studying Python, you should be able to figure this out, without spending too much time into it. So um, for me, it was just a one line of code. So within any sort of function, right, the return is essentially the result that it's the result of the information you plug in to define this function. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be printed to the console by any means, but essentially it's a value that is returned, and it can just be whether it's stored or it can be printed or whatever that you determine that, right? So for this, we have the parameter just titled string parameter. Um, String parameter calling upon this function here, count. We're going to be counting the instances of the string x, right? And then if that count is equal, if this value equals, the double equal sign is equals, the string parameter value of the count of the number of instances of O, this will equal true. So when I was first starting out, I kind of failed to grasp that, these statements, well, it's like this is a mathematical equation, but it kind of boils down to a true or false, which is Boolean logic, right? So we're asking, or basically what we're telling this program to do is we're going to return this Boolean statement. Does this count equal this count? And that works. Okay, so problem number two. All right. Okay, so we're going to be taking a string, and if there are exactly three spaces between string letters A and B, if there are exactly three spaces, you return you return the function as true, and if not, you return it as false. So for pretty much all my problems, I kind of wrote a little blurb. This was, I guess, more than anything for you guys, but also just to refresh me. But so what did I write here? So yeah, initially I thought this was going to be very, very easy, but it proved to be much more um, developed, required a much more software engineering than I actually thought. Um, I put a lot of hours into this. I was kind of defeated at first when I started doing these challenges because I was like, man, this is challenge number two, getting smoked. Um, but having, doing a little bit more research, I learned the value of initially setting a function equal to a Boolean value. So I learned that let's initially set this function to false, okay? And we're going to run this loop in order to see if it proves to be true. So we're starting off false, and then we're going to run this loop, uh, and I'll get to that in a second here. But we're going to run this loop to see if it actually proves to be true. So for I in range length of AB, so I renamed the parameter to AB just because it made more sense with the problem that was being defined. Um, for I in range length AB, uh, I guess before I go any further, it took me a little bit to kind of understand this syntax because I thought, initially before I start plugging and playing any sort of variable, I need to kind of like define it first. I don't know if it's the same way for other languages, but it's like, as I understand it now, if you are going to be defining, if you're going to be utilizing a variable to call upon an iteration uh, for a looping process, you can define it while you write the loop code. So very, very common for I to be used, at least in Python, as like your loop variable. If that's the right way to say it. But so we're starting a loop for I in the range length of AB. So I got kind of tied up on this when I was first like starting to learn this stuff. Um, because initially it's like, okay, we need to get the length. What are we trying to do here? So essentially, what this code is trying to do is we're trying to search for like the A's and B's, right? And to do that, like we need to understand the length of this string, like the length of spaces, like A, F, T, E, R. Understanding the places in these strings, and you define that by lengths, like so however many spaces that is, that gives you find that out through the length. But again, you only, because software language all starts with zero, we have to then kind of convert that to a range. So let's say hypothetically, I don't know what this is, but let's just say that's like 12 spaces, right? So it would give us 12 if we were just doing length, but range defines that as 0 to 11, because in range you can't hit that length. Um, I don't know how thorough I should be with all this. I don't want to. But essentially, okay, so what we're doing is, we're doing this loop process. We're trying to see, hey, where is the A? Where is the string A? Okay, let's say we found one, right? Let's say Python finds one. If you find that A, and if that place plus 4 places is less than the length of AB, so that's simply just to make sure that we're not running off and we're like trying to see if there's A's or B's um, in a string place that extends beyond the string length, right, that we've been provided. That's just what that is saying. And then if you're saying that, hey, where the A, B is and that I position plus 4, if that value becomes, if that value is B, then this variable I create, or this variable that we initially set to false, is true. And then if that's the case, then return 3 places. So I'll skip out on walking through each of it. I just wanted to at least walk through one chunk of that so you can kind of understand my logic flow with that. Um, and it worked. Nice. Array challenge number 3. Uh, okay. Yeah. All right. So for number 3, um, essentially what it's saying, the problem is you're going to be given a list of, let me make sure. Yeah, you're going to be given a list of integers, and what you need to return is the index place where that list, if the list is initially decreasing, if the values are decreasing and then increasing, you need to return the integer. I'm sorry, the index position where the minimum was. Or if it's in the opposite case where the values are going up and then down, you need to return the integer value where the maximum is. If I think it also says if it's just one sequence, yeah, if it's just one sequence where everything is going up or everything is going down, then you return a -1. So took me a little bit of time to, just because I'm new at all that at this stuff, it took me a little bit of time to realize basically what we're looking for is a max or a min value. And so once I started frame it that way conceptually, it started to fall into place. I just then needed to do a little bit of research to understand the functions and syntax I needed to use to get there. I always find, like, you know that's usually how I approach these problems, is like understand really like the concept. Understand, you can have all these verbiage and all that stuff, but if you understand like what is the actual value you're looking for, and can you spell that out in something much more simply, in a more simple term, such as a min or max, it makes going about creating a solution a little bit more easy. Um, so we create the variable I equals 0, a. So now what we're doing here, and it took me a little while to learn what this could do. So I wanted to sort the list that I was provided because I wanted to find like the min or max. Um, but I first was trying ar dot sort uh, parentheses, but that's what I was trying to do. Is what this does is it creates a new list, a sorted list, versus what ar.sort does is, if I understand it correctly, it just sorts the list that you already have. And when I tried to do that and I tried to plug and play the code below, it wasn't going to work. So what I found to work was that, hey, I'm going to create a separate list here that is based upon the values provided in the parameter, and that list will be defined. It's called AR sorted. So that's what that is, right? And then what this is here, if AR sorted equals AR, what that would mean is that sorting, basically you're sorting them by value, so min to max, max to min, or min to max. And so if they are equal, that means there's only one sequence, and if in that case, as defined by the problem, we're going to return -1. Otherwise, if we can take a look at the first occurrence of I, if it's less than the second occurrence of I, we know that the values are going up. Therefore, we know we're looking for a max. And so if we know this, we know that we're going to need to return ar.index, looking for the index. We're not looking for the number or the value. We're looking for the index of the max of ARR. Or, right, so that's if the values are going up and then dropping off. But if AR of I is greater than AR of I plus 1, that means they're going down. Um, we'll do the opposite. AR return AR dot index the index point where the minimum value of ARR is. And so it works. Whew. Wait, was that 3 or 4? Okay, so that was 3. So then number 4. Okay, so yeah, so this one wasn't too hard, really. I think this, I guess, I learned how to do something. This was more just like, hey, here's a problem. What you're going to learn is you're going to learn how to find the mode in Python, because I didn't really know how to find mode. It wasn't really too hard to look up how to find it. If at this point I don't completely understand key, right? So I'm not being a very good teacher right now because I'm teaching something that I don't understand it fully. But this was one of those problems. As we kind of progress through these problems, uh, this one is one where I was like, hey, I did the research. I don't have the time right now in my life. Like I mentioned, I'm getting ready to move my family and have to support my battalion for the next week and a half, unfortunately. So I don't necessarily understand it, but I know that it works. I have a feeling that a lot of developers do this where they're like, hey, I know this works on the back end. I'll go back and try to understand the logic of the syntax, right? So we're looking for the mode and we're looking for the mean. And if those equal, again, kind of doing a Boolean evaluation here, return 1, else return 0. Okay, cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, okay. So for this problem, essentially what we're doing is you're going to be given, again, we're working within a function here, and the function parameter r is going to be a list of 5 numbers. The first 2 numbers represent a range. The second 2 numbers represent a second range, and the 5th number represents the minimum required overlapping occurrences. So in this example, easy to understand, kind of hard to communicate initially, I guess. So for this example, we have the first range 5 to 11, second range 1 to 5, and number 5, the number of required overlap occurrences. And we know that that is accurate. We know that this is true because a range of 5 to 11 and 1 to 5, obviously 5 and 5, that is an overlap of 1, and therefore this proved to be true. Okay, so this one was a little bit, I'm proud of my work on this one because this was one of those problems. This was probably the hardest problem that I solved just on brain power alone. I did very, very little research on this. I didn't take overly too much time on this, I don't think. I have poured quite a few hours into solving all these, but this one I was really, really stoked because I could figure this one out with just my brain power. Okay, so like I kind of my blurb up here, right? So let's break it up conceptually. We have 2 ranges and we have a minimum number of overlap occurrences, which is defined by um, the 5th value in the parameter. Um, so we understand conceptually what we need to do. Okay, so now here's how I didn't figure this out right away, but create 2 variables, x equals r of 1, 0, 1, so in this case 11, plus 1. I'll go over why I added 1 in a second here. And then y equals r of 3 plus 1. So you can kind of see that what I'm doing is I'm creating x as a variable that is pertains to the first list, and y as a variable pertains to the second list. Okay, I guess here's a good point where I can kind of explain why I added the 1, right? So again, Python, we're dealing with ranges. I mean, you guys you know, so communicating this to a student, right? Because it took me a little bit to understand this. But when we're talking about ranges of values, you have to remember in software that you start with zero. The first placeholder is zero. And so let's say that you have the word letter that's 6 places long, but the range of that string letter is 0 to 5, right? And because we need to identify, we are looking at two range to see where the overlap is, we would not be able to actually effectively see the overlap of this range. We can see just by looking at it 5 and 5. But if we did not add 1, well, that does make sense because the first range is defined by 11. The upper limit is 11, but you get the idea. AR1, AR5. Yeah, to encapsulate, to include the upper value, you you have to add 1 in order, because you have to add 1 so that you can actually account for the value provided in this list. Oh boy. I stumbled my way through that explanation, but okay, so we got that. Anyway, so then list 1 learned how to just create these lists here. So list 1 equals the list of the range, again, range of AR of 0, and then it ends in X, which would be 12, right? So what this is going to do is going to create a list of all the integer values between 0 and 12. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then list 2, the same thing for the second list. Da, 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 da. Again, here I noted that maybe there's a cleaner way to do that. So counters are a big thing in software. Um, Starts at 0. Now we're going to be working through this loop process. So uh, uh, for each value in list 1, and then for each value in list 2, if it is the same value, what this is saying is if there's the same value in both lists, and the counter becomes counter plus 1. Right? And after you've done all your loops, after you've worked through all the values in both of those lists, if the counter, whatever that number is, if it equals in value to R of 4, right? Not 5, 4. R is true, return true. Else, if counter does not equal, exclamation equal is does not equal, return false. And it works. Okay. God, I get so confused. So is that, sorry, I think, let me just, so this is 5, right? I think I just did 5. Yeah, okay, so 5. So now we're doing 6. Trying to work my way through these guys. Math. Okay. Okay. So essentially what we're doing with this is the function, we're given the parameter num, and you need to find the number of times you have to multiply each individual digit of those. You have to find out the number of times you multiply the digits of that number until that number uh, is less than 10, right? So if you have 8, for example, um, you're not, the answer is 0 because you're already less than 10, right? Did I explain that correctly? Until you reach a single digit. So okay, I'm sorry, not until you reach 10, but until you reach a single digit. So 8 is a single digit, so the answer would be 0, right? You don't need to. There's no kind of how you break it up conceptually is like you cannot multiply 8 by a value that doesn't exist, right? It's a single digit, so the solution for this specific instant is 0. Um, so yeah, I'm a nerd, whatever. It took me a while to I had to go back through Adobe. I think it's called Adobe, but that's basically like the primary the Python learning tool I've used. And one of the first things that you learn is just your operators. And operators. When you get to fancy coding, like it's all this number stuff or letters and functions and blah blah blah. But um, this is a arithmetic problem, and so we need to use arithmetic tools. We need to use operators, right? So quickly, I'll just so you understand, since you are the student. So this double slash, right? So there's two different ways we can do division on at least in Python. I'm not sure for the other languages, probably. But you have what's called floor division, double, and then this percentage side is modulus. So floor division, essentially what it does is, I'm just trying to make sure I remember. So floor division is going to give you the the is going to give you the integer that the whole it's going to give you a whole integer, okay? And it's not going to give you, so for example, the best way to explain it is just by giving an example, right? So 47 divided by 10. We all know 47 divided by 10 is 4.7. However, with floor division, the answer is 4, not 5. It's 4. Because we haven't reached 5, right? Only 50 divided by 10 is going to be 5, right? So um, there's a lot of really good there's a lot of applications where floor division comes in handy. But essentially, that's what it is. So you're just getting that one integer. So whether it's 53 divided by 10 or 47, doesn't matter. 59 divided by 10, the answer is still going to be 5 in that instance. Okay, it provides you that near the whole number, the integer, right? And then modulus is providing you with the remainder. So for example, 27 divided by 10, you would say, oh, well, that's 2.7. Well, in modulus, what you're looking for is the remainder. So we know how many times does 10 go into 27? Well, it goes 2.7, but we only need the remainder, which is 7. So 27 modulus divided by the modulus, I'm not sure if that's the way to say it, but in modulus division, 27 divided by 10 is 7 because that is the remainder. Okay, this is essential to solving this problem. So we have a counter because, again, we're looking for the number of times you have to multiply the integers until they become less than 10 or just one number. So whatever number we're given, right? Whatever number we're given, we're going to be, what am I? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So whatever number you're going to be given, you're going to do a floor division to get the first digit, right? And then I kind of assumed that there was only going to be 2 digits for these. Um, and the second digit, what you're going to do is you're going to get whatever parameter you provided, and you're going to get the modulus division divided by 10, right? And the result will equal a new equation, right? Because we're eventually going to have to work into a loop here until a condition is met. You will multiply the first digit times second digit. If now, before we get started into our loop, let's just make sure that we don't have a situation where we don't need to do the loop in this example, for this example. So if the first digit is less than 1, return counter, right? So we're going to return if I think that works. I think there's a better way I could have written this where it said, if there is not a second digit, then return counter. I think this actually is not the best way to write this now that I'm looking at it again. That's all right. Whatever. I think it worked. At least for the test cases. Let's just keep barreling it through. So else if first digit, if you know you have a number greater than 10, you know that you're going to have to do at least one division or one multiplication, right? So we know we're going to already have to do one. All right, so if we're there, if we're at this point, the counter is now at 1, and now we need to run a loop. While the result is greater than or equal to 10, first digit is going to equal the result divided by 10. I put a note here, you know, okay, so when I was first solving this problem, I forgot like that I needed to kind of do these sorts of operations in the loop. And because I was like, well, 77, I know that 77 needs to be multiplied 4 times, I think it is, and it wasn't coming up with 4 times. So eventually I realized that within the loop process, we need to continue the the arithmetic operations for each iteration. Let's figure that out. We'll keep moving forward. So the first digit equals the result, floor divided by 10. Second digit, result, modulus 10. Result equals, we will then do this multiplication again, and the counter will go up. The counter will become counter plus 1. You do this until you end up with a single number. And again, we are looking for the number of counts of the number of times that we had to do um, multiplication. So what did I do? Oh no. Oh, maybe. Whoops. Did I mess that up? Ah, okay. Okay, so that's 6. Back to assessment. So 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think 7 is where I start to lose. I start to lose it. I don't think I solved 7. Okay, so what are we doing? Okay, so problem is, you're going to be given a parameter. The parameter is a list of zeros, is of potentially zeros, ones, and twos, no particular order. You need to define the num. You need to return the number of spaces between 2 and 1 because they're mortal enemies. um, so here again, I always try to conceptualize the problem. We're trying to return the smallest number of spaces between the eternal enemies 1 and 2. I think a lot of progress is usually keeping things very simple, creating variables. Yeah, so whenever I struggle, I just try to create variables to shape my to help develop my conceptualization of these problems. I don't think I actually ended up figuring this out. I forget. Let me just see. Yeah. So yeah. So all right. Well, we'll keep going on. So anyway, let's create the variable. So 2, 2 is the variable, is the integer 2, 1 is the integer 1, and then we need to create 2 lists where we are going to house. Ideally, what we do is we need to house the places where the index places where these 2s and 1s are. Okay, because again, it's not so much the 2s and 1s, but it's essentially we're looking for the number of indexes, uh, spaces between the 2 and 1, right? And so it took me a while to kind of figure this out. Um, before we kind of launch into that, if 2 not in enemies, right, return 0. Because if there's not a 2, then it says, hey, return 0. Else. So now what we're doing is we need to create some code, write some code that populates these lists, okay? And this is not something that I knew of my own brain power. This is something that this is research power. I'm still trying to understand, like, so enumerating is like we're creating a list where for each of these values we are now assigning 2 values. One value is the index location and the second value is the value. I hope that is correct. Um, I think this is where, like, and I remember in Adobe I was talking about you're creating a list of tuples. I'm not sure if this actually does create tuples, but essentially like you're creating pairs. Um, yeah, so I spelled out here like, hey, I need to continue on with this learning. Another, so we create these lists, And I know that this worked. I know it did create lists. And again, what we're trying to find is we're trying to find the minimum while we scour over the list. There's going to be various distances here. So like this one is like 3, and this one is 4, and this one's 5. We need to look for the minimum distance, right? So I create a variable here. And again, one of the tricks I've learned is whenever you're looking for a minimum, you can first define it by a very, very high number. And um, whenever numbers evaluations come in that are lower, you then assign the new minimum possible delta to the new evaluation. So yeah, this is where I think things started to get wonky. Maybe this is kind of showing you sort of like the where my this is like where my knowledge with Python starts to die and kind of drop off a little bit. But essentially, what I'm trying to do here is essentially so for each value in X, okay, you're going for every value in this list, if in an index list of twos, you're now going to be looking at for each value in X, you're going to be looking at a value in Y, and you are going to be looking for the absolute difference, which is always a positive value, between those two. And if the minimum, right, okay, yeah. So and then what this is saying is basically your minimum delta will become your the yeah, this is again like the kind of pertains to the code that I researched. I don't fully understand this part right here. This is what I found on Stack Overflow and then what was written. Um, but I'm still kind of working through understanding how this works, because essentially what we're trying to do is, hey, does this iteration delta, is it less than the minimum possible delta? And if so, you set the minimum possible delta down to this iteration delta. You do so while you're working through this loop, but it did not work in every instance. So this here is where this is sort of like a point that I'm still trying to figure out right here. Fix. Maybe that isn't actually the point. You guys might be able to point out where else I'm wrong, or where this solution is wrong. So that's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this one's pretty easy. Again, so my blurb here, we don't have to come up with like this deep wormhole of conditionals stacked on conditionals, and you have to make sure the whole framework of the conditional structure is syntactically sound, right? This is like, hey, we just have like 3 or 4 different conditionals that need to be met. They're not necessarily related, and if one is false, then the whole thing doesn't work. Okay, so I'm really not going to spend too much time on this, but you have these 4 conditions, right? And so for your code, you just need to write out those conditions. Hey, define this condition. If it isn't, if the username that's input is within those within is acceptable based on those conditions, it's true. If not, false. Okay. Yeah, that's not that one wasn't too bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, yeah. So I think so 9. I'm not much of a good teacher on 9 because I couldn't figure it out. So sorry, students. Probably going to need your help on this one, honestly. There's probably just some principle here, or some aspect of Python I just don't understand or failing. It's probably right in front of my face, but I just can't see it. But essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the max value, and we're in a list, and we're saying, and we're going to question, we're going to ask, hey, does any sum of the rest of the values, does any sum of all those values end up equaling to the max value? Right? That is what, yeah, okay. So I think where I was stumbling on this one is I was stumbling with this. I mean, there honestly might be some errors in here, but I'm I don't understand essentially how to go about finding all the possible summations of a list, because I feel like that. I mean, if you had a really long list, like that could be an extreme, that could require quite a bit of computational power, maybe. But I was doing my research, Stack Overflow and Geeks for Geeks or whatever. I couldn't really figure it out, so I mean, I'll kind of just give you at least. I'll just quickly breeze through this. So I know that we're looking for the max, and I figured we might as well sort this list. We're not creating a new list; we're just sorting it. Because the max. Okay, so we sort, and then integers. Yeah. Okay, so I do that in order to then come up with a separate list of values, which is from the first value, which is 0, up to, again, we're talking about range. So negative one, whenever you're talking about ranges, is always the last. Uh, it's always the last value, right? So because we're doing with range, we're actually not going to encapsulate that last value, and that last value is going to be the max, right? So we don't want to. So I thought that this would make sense. And then the sum of integers, sum ints, the variable, equals the sum of ints, right? And if sum of ints equals the max number, AR equals true, which are. But I think in my test case it was not, right? So this is where I'm trying to, for I in ints of I, for each number, right? You're now going to try to add a number, the next number to it. So for this value here, and then for these values here, not the same value, because you can't add the same value because it's only one value. But if you have this value and you have this value, and if you add those together and it equals the max number, if you loop through that, wouldn't that, my thought now is that it should find the max, but it doesn't. Yeah, so okay, yeah. So I'm monkeying with the code here. Like I'm trying to there it's saying that line 9, there's something wrong with this and I don't quite understand. If I had more time, guys, honestly, I know I could figure this stuff out on Stack Overflow or something, but unfortunately I just, I don't have all the time in the world right now. So, okay. So, array, this is an array challenge. So that was 9, right? Okay, so 10. Did I get 10? I think I went down on 3 of these. Okay, yeah, so this was like, I don't think I actually ended up getting this one either. Okay. Okay, so essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a parameter, and in the parameter there's going to be 2 items, string items. There's going to be the first part, which is going to be an animal of some sort, and the second is going to be a string of a number. So what we need to do is we need to display the animal letters in a zigzag, and the lines of the zigzag is defined by the number provided here. Okay? Um, and then if that zigzag zigs and zags enough, we then need to concatenate the visual product. So, Coderbyte, like you kind of given an example here, right? You need to concatenate these letters to reflect, hey, print the letters side by side so that the letters on the first row are next to each other, and then comes the second row and the third row. So Yeah, I'll be honest. Like I saw this and I kind of tried to conceptualize some of this code and try to figure it out on my own. But I was like, look, okay, like I'm gonna have to research on Stackflow and the overflow on this one. I have a feeling that there's gonna probably be some problems out there like it. And sure enough, yes, there were on Geeks for Geeks as well. I took those, I drew from those and tried to translate them into the solution that I needed, but it's not quite working. I think, yeah. So when I do line 20, it's saying that there's a problem with this line here. Um, yeah. I just couldn't figure it out. I was trying to work through this logic. I obviously, like, I knew some of the basic stuff, like, hey, let's define the variable animal as what's provided here first, and then the number of lines is going to be equal to the integer value of the string of r uh, of one, which is five. If lines equals one, then just print off the word cat or print off the animal, right? Because you're not going to be doing any sort of zigzagging. I knew we were going to have to find length. Again, like this is all like I kind of reverse engineered it from Stack Overflow. Didn't copy paste or anything like that, but I reverse engineered it. I was understanding this. I'm understanding this. I'm understanding row down. This is just where I start to kind of I just start to die. There's just different variables within variables here. So for I in the range of length, I get that. And now we're looking for, so space list, this for I, that the value of the space for I, the value of space list defined by the row will become I value of space list divided by the row plus the animal I. Yeah, I mean, I can probably, if I sat down and just listened to some nice, relaxing music, I could probably work through this. But I'm not going to waste you guys' time. I couldn't figure this out. I'd like to keep working on it if I have some time in the field this next week and a half. But I think that's number 10, guys. I didn't mess around with 11 or 12. Apparently, 12 is like impossible. That's what uh, Greg told me, and I have a lot of other big priorities right now, guys. I can't spend too much time on this. I can tell you that yes, I am 100% um, committed to this program, um, but unfortunately, the military is they're squeezing every drop of energy out of me while they can. So apologize. I know that video went pretty long, but that's everything. I hope you guys got out that video what you were looking for. I can promise you I'll be a very, very good student, and I'm very much eager to your guys' feedback, and hopefully we can move forward and I can join you in person for the April cohort for the DevOps program. Thanks, guys. Take care.